What's going on, my Central Unit? It's the Central Man here, so back again with another classic Wrestlemania pay-per-view revisited review. I'm looking forward to revisiting and reviewing a classic Wrestlemania show. This one is a true classic Wrestlemania show. I'm talking about Wrestlemania 17, aka Wrestlemania X7. I did review this show 5 years ago, for the 20th anniversary of Mania 17 or X7, depending you call this show, whether it's 17 or X7, whatever. I know like last week was the 25th anniversary of Mania 17/X7, but I still want to, going back and, revisited this show. For many fans, this is considered to be one of the greatest WrestleManias of all time. I'll get to that part at the end of this review. It's, I think it's the pinnacle of the Attitude Era. It's, you can call it the Manias of Manias, but, yeah. Like, it's just like one day, waiting for the perfect time to do a revisiting review of Mania 17, and the time is now, for the month of April, because it is the 25th anniversary of this show, because last time I reviewed Wrestlemania 2, that's the because this month marks the 40th anniversary of that show. I need to review Mania 40. I need to revisiting and reviewing Mania 17. So I review a crap WrestleMania. Now I'm revisiting. I'm trying to reviewing a good WrestleMania, a great WrestleMania. So yeah, going back to 2001, the show took place on the 1st of April 2001 on April Fool's Day at the Reliant Astrodome, or just the Astrodome in Houston, Texas. The attendance of Wrestlemania 17 or X7, depending you call it, whatever you call this show, is 67,925. Wrestlemania 17 or X7, I'm going to trade back and forth, received about 1.4 million pay-per-view buys. This is the first wrestling show to hit that million buy rate mark. 1 million buy mark rate. Wow, that was at the time. It's really at the time was the biggest, most bought WrestleMania show of all time. And then, it will never hit that million buy rate mark again until WrestleMania 20 in 2004. The last WrestleMania to hit that million buy rate mark is WrestleMania 29 in 2013. The headliner was John Cena and The Rock, the WrestleMania 28 rematch. That was the last time that WrestleMania received that million buy rate mark. And then, you got the dawn of the, of the network, and then now we're on Netflix. So, anyway, I'm pointing out this is the first WrestleMania to held in the state of Texas. And the next time they'll do a WrestleMania in the state of Texas was WrestleMania 25 in 2009. The last time they'd do a WrestleMania in Texas will be WrestleMania 32 in 2016. Anyway, the commentators for WrestleMania 17/X7 are Jim Ross and Paul Heyman. This is Paul Heyman's first pay-per-view appearance for the Federation. Right now it's the WWE. He jumped ship to the WWF after, I think it was after ECW's final pay-per-view, Guilty as Charged. He showed up on Raw. This is after, by the way, he's replacing Jerry Lawler. We'll get to that shortly, but he showed up on Raw, as a commentator. This is the start of the partnership between JR and Paul Heyman throughout 2001 until Lawler came back to the company at the end of the year. So yeah, Paul Heyman replaced Jerry the King Lawler because he left after the situation between the Cat and Right to Center. I'll get to that part later on. So yeah, getting Paul Heyman, because at the time ECW was going out of business, they'll cease to exist, but getting Paul Heyman to the WWF was a major coup, and he's still in the company to this day. So yeah, it's funny. He last on the commentator. He remained as a commentator until November 2001 after Survivor Series, and then he came back. The Raw after WrestleMania 18, bring Brock Lesnar, and the rest is history. So anyway, so before we get to the actual matches of the show, let's do the only one match on. I almost say the dark match for the pre-show. It's actually a match on Sunday Night Heat. The show before WrestleMania 17. This is a tag team match. We got Steve Blackman and Grandmaster Sexy, that's Brian Christopher, taking on X Factor. That's the team of X-Pac and Just Incredible, by the way. And the quick result is that X Factor got the victory, beating Grandmaster Sexy and Steve Blackman. So let's move on to let's move on to the first match of the night. So I think this is the first outdoor WrestleMania since WrestleMania 9 in 1993. I think it's the first arena WrestleMania since Mania 8 in 1992. Wow. It's funny, the next time they'll do a WrestleMania in a football field will be WrestleMania 23 in 2007. Anyway, so let's get to the opening match of WrestleMania 17. This is the first of 6 championship matches for this show. The first one's for the Intercontinental Championship. Chris Jericho defending the belt against the WWF Commissioner William Regal. So Regal became commissioner of the WWF. This was after Vince fired Mick Foley. He beat Al Snow. I think it was in March. I think it was March, January, February, March, whatever. He beat Al Snow on Raw to become the new commissioner of the World Wrestling Federation. Because it's funny, like Al Snow was doing campaign to become the next commissioner for the federation. He had midgets becoming his cabinets, but he lost to Regal. You won't see Al Snow again because he's out filming the first season of Tough Enough. He came back probably late at the end of the year. So anyway, so the first, this was the start of the Regal regime. The one person confronting William Regal is Chris Jericho. He's besmirching William Regal, the commissioner. So Regal's abusing his powers. He's like putting Jericho in, I think, matches. He got beaten up by the right to censor. He put in a handicap match with the Dudleys. Jericho got his own back on Regal. Famously, Jericho pissed in William Regal's tea. Regal was sipping the tea and his facial reactions, and then he dressed up like Doink. I think he him with I think it was the lion salt, and locking I think it was the water Jericho or the lion tamer onto Regal to tap out. I think according to Jericho's book, I think he was preparing or came back at backstage, saw Shawn Michaels, and Shawn thought they were repackaging Doink, because the reason why Jericho's dressed up like Doink is just promoting the gimmick Battle Royal. We'll get to that later on. So I forgot to mention this. Regal attacked Jericho, injuring the shoulder, locking in the Regal stretch, to get some heat on the go home SmackDown before the show. The match itself was fine. It was a good match, not Jericho, Regal, speaking of Jericho, Jericho was going like I think it was a suicide dive or some kind of splash off the top rope, but instead he kind of overshoot it, It was kind of a botch, but it didn't really hurt this match, The little bulk of the match, you had Regal working on the injured shoulder of Chris Jericho. I think he kind of exposed the turnbuckle pad and kind of shoved Jericho into that exposed corner of the ring. Anyway, kind of locking the Regal stretch onto Jericho. Jericho reached the ropes. I don't think Jericho hit not hit, but he didn't lock in the walls of Jericho onto Regal. But anyway, so in the end, Jericho kind of shoved Regal into that exposed turnbuckle, hit the bulldog, hit the lion moonsault for the win. Very, not odd, but kind of like too rushed. I think the ending was a bit rushed, in my opinion. The Jericho-Regal match lasted about 7 minutes. I wish they added about 3 more minutes, man. I think it was a bit too quick, in my opinion. But it's kind of whatever, man. But Jericho retains the Continental title because, by the way, he beats Chris Benoit in that awesome ladder match at the Royal Rumble back in January. And Jericho ended up dropping the title to Triple H. I think it was 2 days later on SmackDown. By the way, it was a tape delay. By the way, it wasn't 2 days later, but it was on Thursday at the time. So he on the first SmackDown after Mania, Jericho lost the title to Triple H by the interference of William Regal. The Regal Jericho feud, it's not over yet. It kind of ends. It's basically setting up the Duchess of Queensberry match at Backlash. So I'm not, if you want more information about this match, go watch my review of Backlash 2001 for more information. So the next match, this is a 6-man tag team match. Right to Censor, that's the team of not Stevie Richards, Bull Buchanan, the Good Father and Val Venus, with Stevie Richards, the leader of RTC, taking on the APA and Taz. No build. I don't think there's any build to this because this was way back in February. Lawler was in the match against the Right to Censor group. I think it was Val Venus. Yeah, Lawler. This was this rivalry between Jerry Lawler and Right to Censor. So Lawler lost to Steven Richards at No Way Out in February. That forced the Cat to join Right to Censor. You can tell. The Cat crying. He doesn't want to be part of the group. And then all of a sudden, this angle or this storyline is dropped because Jerry Lawler and Stacey Carter, aka Miss Kitty, aka the Cat, left the company. They quit the company due to creative differences. So you had like Val Venus, getting beamed down because he basically probably had sex with the Cat, because it's totally against their group. Very, like the guys they're basically a cult group, wearing white shirts, black ties, hate everything gets so edgy, So anyway, I'm guessing this was added to the last minute, Some of these matches on the show was no build. It was just basically added to the last minute with, basically just filling up the card. So anyway, so the match itself between RTC and the APA and Taz. Before that, you had Bradshaw, the future JBL. He was just doing some. He was basically doing a passion speech, bring up some Texas sports reference because he's from Texas, by the way, along with Jacqueline. Was in the corner of APA and Taz. Yeah, he did some Texas sports references. Said about hearts meant to be broken, legends meant to be made, egos has to be shattered, and ass needs to be kicked. That's a good promo before the actual match. The match itself, that was more bad than the actual match itself. I'm not saying it was a bad match. By the way, it wasn't really a bad match. It was just kind of there. Everyone had their licks. Anyway, I think the Good Father, aka the Godfather, did the former Ho Train onto Taz. I think that was just a transformational spot, not the actual finisher. In the end, he was going for the same move onto Bradshaw. He got out of the way. Bradshaw hit the clothesline from hell onto the Godfather or the Good Father for the win. So yeah, this is basically the beginning of the end of RTC, Right to Censor for short, because the group end up disbanded by June. And I'll get to more now. We get to the women's title match. So yeah, the writing was on the wall for that faction. It was this is technically the one of the last pay-per-view matches as a group before they're gonna break up in the summer. So it's just what it is. So it was fine. Everyone got their moments. And for Taz, it's very funny for Taz. 1 year prior, he's in that awful hardcore battle royal / scramble match. And then 1 year later, he had a fine 6-man tag team match. I don't call it a schmaz, but it was fine. Everyone get their moments in. Boom, boom, boom. Get out quickly. So let's move on to the third match of the show. The third match of the show. This is a triple threat match for the WWF Hardcore Championship. So Raven defending the title against the Big Show and Kane. Big Show and Kane were kind of like eat each other's throats, costing each other matches, and Raven was added to this. It was supposed to be Big Show versus King for Mania 17, but instead, I'm guessing like Raven attacked William Regal. I think it was during a hardcore title match to retain his hardcore title, and as a result, Raven is added to the match as punishment. So, out of the two hardcore title matches at WrestleMania, this is the best. This is the best one. Until they're gonna have that 24/7 thing the following year, because the first hardcore title match at the first triple threat match for the hardcore title Mania 15 was just not good, and that really bad championship scramble / battle royal was not so great either. But this was good. It was a fun brawl. You had all three guys. I think they're fighting in an equipment area. You had Big Show and Kane kind of went through wolves. Wolves. I mean wolves, not wolves. Anyway, went through wolves. You had I think they were in the room. Big Show and Kane, they were about to choke slam each other, but instead they kind of crashed through a wall. What is it? Is it Big Show and Kane? I think one of them kind of throw Raven through a window. The stuff with the golf carts. You had Raven and Big Show in one golf cart. And and you got Kane and the referee. I think the referee is Jimmy Corderas in the other. Raven kind of crashed into a electrical ditch and almost ended the show, because I think the original plan have they were driving across the arena, but instead I'm guessing Big Show got in Raven's way. He was driving, couldn't see, and crashed into that exposed electrical wire, because 1 inches closer it completely ended up shutting down, basically cutting the power for the pay-per-view broadcast and the arena. So we can talk about WrestleMania in the Ultimate Timeline. We can speak about WrestleMania 17 in a bad way if Raven basically almost killed WrestleMania 17, but glad it didn't win in that direction. So Kane kind of dry, Raven's selling his leg, because Kane run over Raven's leg. He kind of sold it a little bit. Fighting the catering area. In the end, Big Show kind of picked up Raven, trying to throw him off the stage. Kane boots the Big Show. Is that Kane? I said Big Show. But anyway, so Kane booted the Big Show while he's holding Raven. Fall off the stage into this wooden glass box thingy. Kane did the dive onto that glass box thingy. I don't know what it's called. It's that portion of the stage to win this match and become the hardcore champion. So, and by the way, I'm glad they never got into that. I'm glad they not ditched, but kind of not used the 24/7 rule, man. I think it was done to death, man. They'll use it the following year, but yeah, it was a fun match. Everyone has their licks in. It's a fun match. It was a fun match. Everyone, not a great match, but it was a good match. Like I said, it's better than that hardcore triple threat match from Mania 15 between Billy Gunn, Al Snow, Hardcore Holly, and that crappy hardcore battle royal / scramble match at Mania 16. So this was a good match. So moving on to the next match. This is the third of 6 championship matches for the show. This is for the European Championship. Yeah, the World Wrestling Federation European Championship. Test defending the belt against Eddie Guerrero, represent the Radicals. So, no build. Like I said, like the RTC versus APA and Taz, no build. The original plan, it was supposed to be Eddie Guerrero versus Chris Benoit, but instead they changed plans. You had Benoit got kicked out of the Radicals. He's turning babyface. Yeah, this group is on its last legs. I'll get to more of that shortly. So, they had a match. They had this mini breakup, mini feud between Benoit and Guerrero. There's no build between Test and Test and Guerrero. It was happened on the go home. Like they had a rematch, and between Test and Guerrero for the European title. Test won the first match. So on the go home Raw, you had Guerrero. I think he disguised as a referee. This was during the match between Test and X Factor, and cost Test a match against X Factor to really get another shot at the European title. So like I said, don't build to this. I felt like it was added to the last minute, It's a match for the sake of a match, but besides that, man, this was good. This was a really good match, This is strength versus agility. It was Eddie's all about speed and agility. Test is about strength, One moment of the match, you had Test got his leg caught between the top and middle rope, You got the referee. I don't know who's the referee. I can't remember who's the referee, but yeah, the referee and Eddie kind of like trying to get Test's leg removed from the ropes, Guerrero working on the leg of Test. He hit like Test hit like first off, like Guerrero was going for Eddie was going for the he was going for the Hurricanrana, but Test countered it, and he did like a flying elbow, crossbody, something like that. That was a near fall. That was cool. And I think minutes later, Test did like a tilt-a-whirl sit-down powerbomb. Wow, fucking Test is underrated, man. Fucking underrated, man. He does these for a big man. He really pull off some good moves. He hit the pop handle slam. Yeah, he got interference by Saturn. He was wearing this fluffy hat. I think Test hit the pop handle slam onto Eddie. Dim Malenko put Eddie's foot on the rope. So you got you got the members of the Radicals interfering. So in the end, Eddie decks Test with the European title belt for the win. And Eddie became the second. He won the European title for the second time. So, and Test hold the belt since January. He beat Regal for the title on Raw. So, like I said, this is the beginning of the end of the Radicals. I think the Radicals is on his last legs because everyone's doing their own thing. Like it was formed when they first came to the company, broke up a little bit, because Eddie was in the storyline with China. Ben was doing his own thing. Then they kind of reformed, like in the preparation for the match at Survivor Series, and then all of a sudden, you got Benoit got kicked out of the group. Eddie's the new leader, and then the group end up disbanded in August, because at this moment, because in May, 1 month later, Eddie ended up breaking away from the Radicals, doing it. They're supposed to do this storyline. And like I said, this was it's the beginning of the end of the Radicals, and it's also the beginning of the end of Eddie Guerrero's first run in the company. Because before that, Malenko ended up retiring later on in the year. He ended up becoming the company's road agent. Lasted until he left the company in 2019. I think he's now in AEW as their road agent. Saturn was in this on-screen relationship with Terry Reynolds, and soon to dating a mop called Moppy. So yeah, I think it was just writing on the wall, no straight direction for that group. Like I said, Eddie broke away from the group. Was about to do this storyline with the Hardys, but Eddie started to have a really addiction to painkillers, sustained to the injury he sustained in the car crash he had in WCW in 1999. So Eddie went on to go to rehab, and then later on in the year, in November, he got arrested of, I think it was a DWI or DUI. It was he was drunk driving, so that led off his release. So it's not the last time we see Eddie Guerrero in the company. He come back to the company after he had a run in the Indies. He's starting to get his act, clean up his act. He came back. Went on to have a really good, successful second run with the company. His first match back in the company, beating RVD for the Intercontinental Championship. Intercontinental Championship. So he went on to become the United States Champion when the title was brought back as the mid-card title on SmackDown. He became tag team champions with his nephew Chavo, and the cream of the crop beating Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship at No Way Out 2004. That was the good highlight. At least that story has a happy ending before Eddie passed away of November of 2005. So moving on to the next match, another match with no build. You know, we got Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit. Who's the best technical wrestler? So Kurt Angle lost the WWF Championship to The Rock at No Way Out in February, because there's no pay-per-views in March because WrestleMania is in the 1st of April. So after that, no Mania match for both Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit. You know, like I said, it was supposed to be Benoit Guerrero, but instead they changed plans. So we got Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit. You know, you had Angle, basically bashed Benoit. You got to like talking shit towards Benoit. Submission hold as the cripple crossface. On the Go Home Raw, Benoit made Angle tap out with the cripple's crossface. Before there was a segment before. This was like earlier in the show. Angle's watching. He's in his locker room watching the tape when Benoit made Angle tap out with the crossface. He's declaring that he's not officially tapped out. He's getting psyched up. He's angry. And by the way, also he ended up injuring Sky Too Hearty's ankle. That was like, the build up to this, actually there's no build up to this. He just basically randomly attacked Sky Too High. You can tell it's, a little bit moving away from the comedic side of Kurt Angle. He's more tense, and then on the Go on SmackDown, you had Angle make Benoit tap out with the ankle locks. So let's move on to this match. So before that, you had Angle kind of the promo. He's basically bashing Texas, on Texans. He said he's not a big fan of the state of Texas. He's bashing the flag of Texas because he has 1 star. And yeah, look at the flag of Texas. It looked like the flag of Chile. But anyway, he's calling the people of Texas bull riding, beer belly, Texas yeehaws. He kind of says, lose the freaking cowboy hats, you're not 7 years old. It's funny, like months later, I think it was on Raw and SmackDown, a segment between him and Stone Cold Steve Austin. You had Austin wearing it's not yellow, it's kind of like this cream cowboy hat. And Angle's wearing this little children's cowboy hat, man. It's funny, like, his promo on Texas about telling the people of Texas to lose the freaking cowboy hats, and months later Kurt Angle's wearing that little cowboy hat. It's just like, wow. Anyway, the match itself was tactical, man. This is the first of many this is the first of the trilogy of matches between Angle and Benoit. They're gonna have it in 2001, 2002, and 2003. Even though you could say the kind of rivalry started the previous year at WrestleMania 16. They were part in that triple threat match between Jericho, Benoit, and Angle in the Euro Continental title match. And after that, they won't face one-on-one until this WrestleMania. So anyway, so this was really good. It's a technical masterpiece. It was moving that mat style wrestling then into that brawling portion of it. I don't think Angle locking the ankle lock on Benoit. I think they try to lock at each other's ankle locks, but countered it. Like they lock it, they both lock in the cripple crossface. There was a referee bump. Benoit managed to make Angle tap out with the cripple's crossface, but the referee's knocked out. So he kind of revived the referee. I think Benoit. Yeah, I think Benoit. Is it Benoit? One did the cross. I think. Yeah, one did a move on the top rope. I think Benoit did his traditional diving headbutt, but Angle selling the nose. Or I think one did a crossbody. One did a crossbody and Angle selling the nose. I can't remember. But anyway, so Angle did hit the crossbody, the moonsault. Actually, not the crossbody. Yeah, it was the moonsault. Angle hit the moonsault on Benoit, and Benoit hit the diving headbutt. So in the end, Angle basically hold on Benoit's tights to win this match. This is the first match of the rivalry, you know, and then I think it's minutes later after the next match, you know, you had Kevin Kelly interviewing Kurt Angle, and Kevin Kelly said to Kurt Angle, you know, do you respect Chris Benoit, you know, and Angle's dismiss it like, you know, there's two guys in the ring, and the best man won. I don't need to respect anybody. And then Benoit attacked Kurt Angle, locking the crossface, once again making tap out. And this has set up the submission Iron Man match at Backlash, and then they're going to have the 2 out of 3 pinfall match at Judgment Day for Kurt Angle's gold medals. And then it's not the last time. They end up forming a tag team, becoming the WWE Tag Team Champions on SmackDown. They're a big part of the SmackDown 6. And then they're going to fight one more last time in 2003, on a one-on-one side at the 2003 Royal Rumble when Kurt Angle was the WWE champion. So it's the first of many matches they're going to have. You know, I think Benoit and Angle, they had good chemistry. I think he said it in a interview with Chris Van Vliet, that, you know, it was his his feud with Benoit was the best of his career, because he had his best matches of his career. So anyway, I forgot to mention, there's one segment I forgot to mention, you know, when I'm talking about the Jericho Regal feud, because months later, and there was another segment, you know, Regal is wearing the WrestleMania 17 jersey. You got Michael Cole interviewing Regal, you know, are you okay? And Regal says, what a bloody stupid question to say, I'm alright, or I'm okay. So you got like Kamala and Kenshi in Regal's office. You know, I think Kamala's grabbing the picture of, I think it was Queen Elizabeth or the Queen's mother. That was kind of funny, kind of random, but it's just promoting the gimmick battle royal. Forgot to mention that. So moving on to the next match. So the next match, this is the 4th of 6 title matches for WrestleMania 17. Ivory representing Right to Censor, defending the belt against the 9th wonder of the world, China. So this is a rematch from the Royal Rumble back in January. So it started in late 2000 when Right to Censor, you know, like choose China as their target, because China was the first. I think she was the first female wrestler to be in a cover of Playboy magazine. So they attacked China, breaking her neck in kayfabe. So China came back, you know, had the scan of her neck, you know. She was going emotional with Jim Ross, you know, like she never might wrestle ever again. So they had the match at the Royal Rumble. China re-aggravate her neck in kayfabe, you know. So no build to this, you know. She came back months later, you know, after her neck injury in kayfabe. She didn't really have a neck injury in real life, but the only reason why China will get another shot at the women's title, women's champion Ivory, if China signs a no harm negotiation. Like, so she signed that. And by the way, Right to Censor, all members of Right to Censor are banned from ringside. So, and it's, you know, they are banned. There's no members of Right to Censor, you know, no Stevie Richards, no Val Venus, no Goodfather, and no Bull Buchanan. So it's just China and Ivory. So the beginning of the start of the match, Ivory is just like switch. First she was like in tears, in fear, didn't want to be like face China. Suddenly she switch. She attacked China from behind, decking her with the women's title belt. Had some few shots, you know, punches, and then she was going for a kick. China like basically like throw Ivory like a rag doll. You know, she was going for the power bomb, but you know, she kind of pulled Ivory's head in the last minute. So in the end, China like hit Ivory with the gorilla press and pins her for the win, and China become the women's champion for the first and only time. Yeah, the match is just a squash match, you know, and it's all. I feel like even though China, I don't think China needs to be women's champion, but it'd be a nice feather to her cap, you know. Like I said, like in that 6-man tag team match, you know, it was the beginning of the end of Right to Censor. The group end up disbanded in in June. I think Ivory ended up like be part of the alliance. And also, this is the beginning of the end of China's run with the WWF. It's really sad, you know, talking about in the current timeline that China end up, funny, this year marks the 10th anniversary of China's death, man. I wish they'd done much more of China's reign as women's champion, because her first and only pay-per-view title defense she's gonna have was against Lita. And afterwards, she was gone. You know, she was gone. She was out of the company by November, December time. Even though that, you know, the company's gonna do one of their biggest storylines of the year, the invasion, and not having like China, one of the top female wrestlers in the company, not involved in that storyline, because who are you going to put in that position? Because Trish is not quite ready. She's like not quite the in-ring athlete yet. Lita's not ready. It's just like the one dream match they should probably, I don't think if they did, if China was part of the invasion storyline, I think the one match she probably could have, there's two solutions, two options. One against Jazz, you know, she ended up like debuting with the company. Shame she's not part of the alliance during the peak of that storyline. And Medusa, Alundra Blaze, because China was like, if you compare two wrestlers between Alundra Blaze, you know, Medusa, and China, Joanie Lauer, like both similar in height. You know, China's full of muscle. I think Alundra Blaze, she's just a tall person. But that could be a good match. You know, like I wish like Alundra Blaze, you know, like patch things up with the company sooner rather than later when she got inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame in 2015. It could really have a good match. You can have China feuding members of the female side of the invasion. She could be part of that, you know, feuding with members of the alliance. But unfortunately, it's not meant to be. So yeah, it was a big, you know, China been in the company for 4 years. You know, since debuting, you know, be part of, you know, Triple H's bodyguard, you know, for that rivalry between Triple H and Goldust for Mania 13, to winning the women's title at Mania 17. Wow. You know, it's just like, yeah, it's just sad. You know, at least she like went on to do good things. You know, become the first and only female to win the Intercontinental Championship. At least in the end, managed to win the women's title. So, you can say submit her as the top female in the company. And let's move on to the next match. So the next match, this is a battle of two McMahons. We got Vince McMahon with Stephanie McMahon Helmsley, Trish Stratus, and Linda in, not Linda, but it was Stephanie and Trish Stratus in Vince's corner, taking on the new owner of WCW, Shane McMahon, I'm reading it on Wikipedia, by the way. So we got Vince McMahon versus Shane McMahon. I'm trying to say, you know. So originally it was supposed to be Vince McMahon versus Mick Foley. That was the original plan, because Vince fired Mick Foley in December because Foley because he did because they did the 6-man Hell in a Cell match at Armageddon that year. So yeah, Vince fired Mick Foley. It started when Vince was like having an affair with Trish Stratus, kayfabe friend, having an affair in front of Linda McMahon. That led to Vince firing Mick Foley, divorcing Linda. Linda have a mental breakdown, and she soon to be drugged up and comatose. She was just lifeless, just not saying anything, not doing anything. She's in a wheelchair for months now. Anyway, so Stephanie won first, like totally against the whole, this whole storyline between Vince and Trish Stratus, and all of a sudden, like, this was after No Way Out, that you got I think it was a tag team match. It was a tag team match. You had suddenly you had on Raw, you had Trish Stratus was turned. Like, Vince turned on Trish Stratus, embarrassing Trish Stratus, cuffing Trish with mop goop, and the most offensive storyline or angle or segment have Vince made Trish stripped down to her underwear and barking like a dog, and Trish is still fine and okay with it, So yeah, it's sort of like Stephanie's hate the whole idea. Now, suddenly she's now once again aligned herself with her father. Then Shane came back to fight for his mother honor. Vince says, like, I'll never forgive your mom giving birth to you. Then on the final Raw before WrestleMania, Shane McMahon showed up on the final Monday Nitro and purchased WCW in kayfabe, because I forgot to mention this. This is the first pay-per-view after WWF purchased WCW, and it was basically just Shane's getting one up against his old man. So that's the storyline. I'm trying to Vince and Trish having an affair, divorcing Linda, firing Mick Foley. Now and then Shane came back to purchase purchasing WCW. So anyway, so he came out wearing, it's funny, Regal came out wearing, this was a segment wearing the WrestleMania 17 jersey. Shane's also wearing the Mania 17 jersey. He came out, kind of shout out to the WCW guys. That I think we got John Laurinaitis, you got Mark Jindrak, Mike Sanders. You're not gonna see him in the Federation, I think. Mike Awesome, Sean Stasiak, Chavo Guerrero, Hugh Morris, Stacy Keibler. Apparently, the original plan for this match, you have the WCW guys trying to help Shane getting the win over Vince, but instead, on the day before Mania 17, Sean Stasiak, who's was in the company before as Meat, part of the Pretty Mean Sister storyline, he basically blurred out the whole plans on I think it was a local reporter. Vince got very mad and so close firing the WCW guys, but instead the WCW guys end up sitting in the balcony as a punishment. So the match between Vince and Shane, this was a good match, but Vince is not Vince is not a wrestler, Shane is not a wrestler. But they're better characters, but they're just not good as wrestlers. Vince is one of the best characters and also the best heels of all time. But I think they use trash cans and weapon and the candlesticks. It's very rare. It's one of some of these rare matches of every time you see a Vince McMahon match, you end up having Vince bleeding buckets, but sometimes you don't see Vince bleeding buckets. Anyway, so yeah, Stephanie got involved, slapping Shane. Shane was going for the diving elbow off the top rope onto Vince, but instead Stephanie pulled her dad out of the way in the last minute, and out comes Trish Stratus wheeling Linda McMahon. You had Trish trying to check on her best friend Vince McMahon, because Trish was the mistress in this storyline, but swerved. You had Trish, slapping Vince, and also cat fighting Stephanie, chasing Stephanie out to the back. You had Mick Foley trying to break it, the cat fight. Stephanie slaps Mick Foley, and then she left the ring. Anyway, so you had Vince with that look said to Linda, "You bitch," Vince, not Vince, Foley trying to stopping Vince, going towards Linda, but instead, you had Vince smacking Mick Foley in the back with the chair. I think it was the back and the chair shot to the head, because at the time it's legal. Right now it's not. So anyway, so he kind of grabbed Linda, to the ring, place her on the chair, make her watch when Vince beating down Shane. You had Vince whacking Shane with the trash cans, and suddenly the fans pop with Linda McMahon rise up her chair and low blow and kicking Vince in the grapefruits. Mick Foley had some shots onto Vince, hit him with the running knee. In the end, Shane hit Vince with the coast to coast for the win. good match. I think it was a really good match. You're not going to get a really good hardcore match. You know, it was good, but it was more about the story. Like, everyone get their like chops onto Vince because what Vince did over the past few months. You know, with like, I think the one person got the main redemption out of this match is Linda, because facing the man that really ruined her professionally and personally. I forgot to mention this. There was a continuity error. I forgot to mention this. You know, before I actually talk about this match. You know, Foley signed like a contract with Linda McMahon. This is before, you know, the divorce and Mick Foley getting fired. It was basically a creative get out of jail card for Foley. You know, I forgot to mention this, but everyone got their licks in. You know, it's Trish. You know, because, you know, she got betrayed by Vince. You know, the whole stuff, like she barks like a dog. You had Mick Foley getting fired. You know, Linda really got the main redemption. So I'm glad they never had the WCW guys interfering. That'll be too many cooks in the kitchen. But I don't think it need to have the WCW side in the storyline revolving around the McMahons. You know, Vince, Shane, Stephanie, and Linda. You know, this when Shane purchases WCW in kayfabe, it's just, like I said, last window dressing. It's the last wrinkle, you know, leading up to WrestleMania 17 to get Shane a leg up towards against his father. And yeah, so yeah, I think it's I'm glad they never got in that direction. And knowing what's going to happen to the Evasion storyline months later, you know, yeah, I think the right, you know, people want to see Vince getting his comeuppance, and he got his comeuppance. But that's the last time we see Vince on the show. Spoiler alert. So yeah, like in the Ultimate Timeline, if they just did Vince McMahon, Mick Foley, would it be a bad match? Probably not, because Vince, focus Foley declined because he wants to retire his on his retirement. He had his WrestleMania moment at WrestleMania 16. What more he's gonna get? So anyway, so let's move on to this one is fucking a classic, man. We got TLC 2 for the WWF Championship. So the Dudleys defending the belts against the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian. So, you know, it started at WrestleMania 16 in the Triangle Ladder match. Edge and Christian won the first match, the Triangle Ladder match. Then fast forward in this, like just last summer, a few months later at SummerSlam, we had TLC 1, Edge and Christian, Hardys, Dudleys, that ENC won once again. So yeah, nothing much about this, don't really need, they know they're gonna have a good banger. You had ENC and that's Edge and Christian, by the way, and the Dudleys had new allies. You had Spike, he's now part of the Dudleys, and you got Rhino, who's the final ECW's television and world champion, aligned himself with Edge and Christian. So I think it was a good coup. It was like Paul Heyman, it was a good coup signing Rhino. Even though his run in the company was not so much, but at the time it was cool. So it's funny, like I was just like months ago I was just reviewing Royal Rumble 2001. The Dudleys beat Edge and Christian for the belts, and then that was in January. Fast forward, they kind of trade back and forward with the belts, ever since the Royal Rumble. The Hardys beat the Dudleys for the belts on Raw in March, and then a few weeks later ENC captured the belts. Then the Dudleys, on the same night regained the belts. So going into this TLC match at WrestleMania 17. So I don't want to go in much about this match, but my advice to you: go and watch it on Netflix, or you can find it on YouTube. But everyone had their moments. The Hardys did their spot on the ladders. It's kind of matched up personality. TLC, tables, ladders, and chairs. The Dudleys with the tables. the Hardys with the ladders, and Edge and Christian with the chairs. You know, you had Edge and Christian, Edge and Christian. The Hardys did their spot onto ENC. It was I think it was a splash and leg drop combo. The Dudleys did the what's up. So anyway, everyone had that. Using their weapons in their full potential. There's one spot in this match. You had all 6 guys fighting in ladders. I think Bubba kind of pushed one ladder that was with Christian and Matt Hardy in it, and Christian kind of fall out of the ring. I was shocked. Oh my god, it looks like his head's gonna splat first on the concrete. I'm glad he didn't get concussed, but he kind of prevailed. That was just goddamn. You got Spike, Lita, Rhino got involved. Spike, hit Edge and Christian with the what's it called? The acid dog? AKA I call it the sliced bread. I think Spike put I think it was Edge or Christian through a table. Rhino hit the gore. I think one of them hit hit Baba or Matt Hardy through a table with the gore. Lita hit the Hurricane Run onto Rhino. She ate the he kind of bashed Spike over the head with the chair, and Lita ate the 3D. Almost said the 1D. The 1D is more associated with the Usos when they were part of the Bloodline, but it was the 3D by he ate the 3D by the Dudleys. Jeff Hardy did climb the Jeff Hardy Memorial Ladder, the tallest Jeff Hardy ladder. Hit the Swanton on both Edge and Spike Dudley. I heard really like Spike suffered a nasty injury in this spot. He ended up doing the same spot to Edge. Years later at WrestleMania in 2007 in the Money in the Bank ladder match. Speaking of Jeff Hardy, he was trying to do this trapezius walk on the ladders. He almost did it, but he lost his balance a little bit. But he was dangling between the both tag team towels, and you can see in many video clips with it revolving around TLC of Edge spearing Jeff Hardy that from mid-air. That was sick. Anyway, Rhino got involved in the end. He kind of pushed Bubba Ray. Bubba Ray. Yeah, I was right. Bubba Ray and Matt Hardy off the ladder. They kind of crash into the stack of tables and help Edge and Christian to win this match and win the tag team titles once again. So it was a fucking awesome match. I don't know which one's better. Between TLC 1 at SummerSlam 2000 and this and TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17. Which one? I don't know, but it's funny. Edge and Christian won all 3 of these matches. Won the Triangle Ladder match of WrestleMania 16. Won TLC 1 at SummerSlam 2000, and now they just won TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17. And I think this is the last great big moment for Edge and Christian, knowing that later on the year they end up breaking up as a tag team and also feuding. I think it was the last time, because I think it's a sign that I think ENC done everything as a tag team. They've been a tag team since they debuted in the company. And I think it was, they ended up dropping the tag team titles to, I think they ended up dropping it to Undertaker and Kane. So 15 minutes, it was good. Everyone had their licks, and there's many TLC matches over the years. I think it's funny, WWE did the TLC match from SummerSlam last year. Revolve around Wyatt Sick, the Machine Guns, was it Fraction? I can't remember the tag team name, and DIY. It was good, but it's not on the same level as the TLC matches revolve around ENC, Hardys, and Christian. I think the bench is high, and nothing's gonna reach that same mark. So, anyway, moving on to the next match. This is the Gimmick Battle Royale. This is a bit of a breather from TLC 2. And by the way, the commentators, they swap, for most of the show it's JR and Paul Heyman. For this match, it's Mean Gene Okerlund and Bobby the Brain Heenan. We haven't seen them in the WWF for almost since the early 90s, because they end up going to WCW. And I said to myself, wow, they misuse like Bobby the Brain Heenan. Even though Mean Gene Okerlund will be working with the company once again, Continental and Vintage and other like appeared on WWE programming years after this, but I wish they did more with Bobby the Brain Heenan. He did this segment, did the gimmick about commentating the gimmick battle royal. He ended up getting inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. The stuff with Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young. He did some DVD interviews, for the DVDs they put out, but yeah, it's just a wasted opportunity, man. So the funny part, for Paul Heyman, I don't really talk about commentaries. He said, hope Mean Gene Okerlund replace you next night on Raw, because I like the banter between JR and Paul Heyman. They're gonna get more. They'll go back and forth when they get into the Invasion storyline later on in the year. So the competitors in the gimmick battle royal, the battle royal. So we got the Bushwhackers, we got the National Disasters, that is Earthquake and Tugboat. Earthquake is John Tenta, and Tugboat is Fred Ottman, the future shotmaster. Brother Love, Bruce Pritchard. Michael P.S. Hayes coming out with Bad Street USA. Kamala with Harvey Whipperman and Kem Chi. Kem Chi is Steve Lombardi, aka the Brooklyn Brawler, which just came out as the Brooklyn Brawler. Doit the Clown, that is basically Ray Apollo, not Matt Bourne. The Gobbledygooker, and that is not Eddie Guerrero, Hector Guerrero wearing that costume. The Repo Man, that is Barry Darsow, aka Demolition's Smash. Jim Cornette, weird because he's not really a wrestler, he's a manager. I forgot to what's the next one. And Nikolai Volkov, the Iron Sheik, Sergeant Slaughter, I think I mentioned it, but anyway, and Druk the Dumpster Drozy. And I'm going to talk about him briefly in our current timeline. Just I think last year he got arrested. I think he's still in court. He basically taking pictures. I think he was taking pictures of a minor. So fuck him. He can rot in hell. I think he was using cryptocurrency to buy pictures of kids. I don't want to get into that. Go look it up on online. I'm not going to talk about it. He could rot in hell. Fuck Duke Drozy. Nothing much to talk about this. The fans really pop for it because it's nostalgia. I forgot to mention One Man Gang. I forgot One Man Gang. Originally, he was supposed to showed up as Akeem, the African Dream, but he lost so many weight, so he couldn't fit for his costume. So here's the OMG. So anyway, so the match itself is nostalgia because you got wrestlers represent the 80s. Well, really the two. One is like the boom period of the 1980s, and some gimmicks. I forgot the Goon. Fuck the Goon, Bill Owen, Jesus, and you got and then some crappy gimmicks from 1995. The cheesy, goofy gimmicks from the early 90s. Where they didn't have Barry Horowitz and the Brooklyn Brawler, but it's whatever, man. But anyway, I'm trying to keep it short and simple. And Hillbilly Jim, I forgot Hillbilly Jim. Fuck. I think I mentioned it. I don't think I mentioned him in the Battle Royal for WrestleMania 2, but I forgot I mentioned Hillbilly Jim. He appeared in the first Battle Royal at Mania 2, and now fast forward at Mania 17, 15 years later. He's in, wow, I forgot I mentioned him. Jesus. Me and my big brain. I'm trying to keep it short and simple. It's good to see Heenan and Okerlund, even though Oakland's not really a commentator, he's a ring announcer, but anyway, you can tell like Heenan has an experience as a commentator. In the end, the Iron Sheik eliminate Hillbilly Jim for the win. And it's funny, like if you compare the Battle Royals between Mania 2 and Mania 17, you got both. You had former world champions. You had Pedro Morales and Bruno Sammartino in that battle royal with the American football players. And then, there were former world champions. And fast forward Mania 17 in 2001, you had two former world champions like the Iron Sheik and Sergeant Slaughter. In the end, speaking of Slaughter, he got pissed off because he got eliminated because I think he can't. I think Sheik was unable to basically couldn't go over the top rope, so he had Sheik win. So in the end, Slaughter basically lock in the Cobra Clutch onto the Iron Sheik to get some heat. Typical USA. The American faces battling the foreign heel, even though Slaughter was also a foreign heel, even though he's American. During the day, he's facing his former member. When Slaughter was when he was the Iraqi sympathizer, so a decade prior. So, and really shocking to me, it's depression. Some of these wrestlers who compete in that battle royal, they end up, most of them are past their best. This is 2 years after that polarizing show outside of the mainstream wrestling companies like WWF and WCW, the Heroes of Wrestling, and they end up doing the end of the show in that 605 reunion a few years later. Most of them end up passing away decades after this match, including Heenan and Mean Gene Okerlund. Most of the wrestlers in that battle royal is no longer with us. That's just very sad reality, man. So moving on to the next match. So this is the Undertaker versus Triple H. The kind of feud in 1996, 97, 98, but that's more between Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. So Triple H, after beating Steve Austin in the free Stage of the Hell match at No Way Out in February, he demands to be in the main event of WrestleMania because he beat both Stone Cold and The Rock. He kind of brags about beating everyone in the company. Out comes the Undertaker saying you never beat me, I'm gonna make you famous. Weeks prior, you had Triple H beating down the Undertaker. I think he beat him down, choked him with the chair, sit him down on the chair while pinning the Undertaker down with the chair. You had Taker smashing the limousine, and unfortunately it led to Undertaker receiving a restraining order to stay away from Stephanie McMahon and Triple H. So Kane, who's the Undertaker's brother, chasing Stephanie, threatening to, there's one segment had Kane grabbing Stephanie, about to throw her off the balcony. You could tell that's a stunt double, making, basically lifting the restraining order to have giving both Kane and Undertaker matches at WrestleMania. Friend the commissioner of the Federation, William Regal. So Undertaker getting arrested, then in the go home SmackDown, Triple H smash and destroy the Undertaker's motorcycle. Triple H has some good attires. He ended up wearing that half jean shirt and leather jacket. He ended up wearing the hats and gloves. Man, that was a cool look, and the sunglasses. That was cool. Triple H came out with Motorhead, called The Game. And I forgot to mention something about revisited review of Royal Rumble 2001. I'm going to say it right now briefly. It's funny, in the start of 2001, Triple H changed his theme music. Since he broke away from DX and slowly becoming that main event player, he came out with My Time. That lasted about 1999 to a little bit of 2001. Then he changed his theme music to The Game by Motorhead. That'll be his theme music to this day. And then sometimes he changed it up to King of Kings. Really slowly becoming a fan of Motorhead. I like Triple H's theme musics, The Game, and King of Kings, and also Blind in the Sun. That'll be the song by Evolution. And also, I like Ace of Space. It got me a slight fan of Motorhead. Undertaker, I think he came out with Rolling by Limp Bizkit, you know. And yeah, it's shocking to me. This is the first ever time they actually feuding. Like, they had a match back in 1997, you know, but with it, so I think it was on a Raw and also at Shotgun Saturday Night. But the rivalry in 97, 98, it was more between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker than Triple H, you know, because Triple H was more of Shawn Michaels' lackey. But fast forward like a few years later, Triple H is his own man now, so it's really technically the first time they actually feuded, you know, even though they had matches in the past. So anyway, I think it's the first time they mentioned The Undertaker's undefeated streak. So the match was a brawl. Fucking, it's mostly a brawl the whole time. Like, there was a referee, you know, you had Mike Chioda, you know, you had like Triple H going in the face of Mike Chioda. They did like the shoving match, you know. I like it more when Triple H did it to Earl Hebner, but whatever. So anyway, I think Undertaker chokeslam Triple H. Triple H kicked out. Taker got pissed off at Mike Chioda, killing him, you know, basically just like, I think he dexed him and elbowed him in the back, and then they're fighting in the crowd. I think Triple H like took a back, he kind of back body drop in the crowd, you know, in the ring, in the ringside area. So fighting in the crowd, or fighting in some kind of scaffolding bit, you know. You know, Triple H, you know, decking Undertaker with chairs, with the chair shots, you know. Suddenly, I think Undertaker, Taker chokeslam Triple H off the scaffolding bit, you know. He ended up doing a diving elbow off the scaffolding part, you know. You know, by the way, this is not no DQ, it's not false count anywhere. It's just a one-on-one match because the referee is knocked out. So I don't think Triple H hit the pedigree. Did he hit it? I don't think he did. It's fucking very rare. But yeah, they were trading back and forth with the sledgehammer. You know, Taker was going to hit. You know, yeah, he hit Triple H with the tombstone power driver. Referee still out. You know, I think he did. But anyway, I can't remember. But anyway, so Undertaker hit Triple H with the last ride, but in the last second, Triple H decks the Undertaker in the head with the sledgehammer. Taker was bleeding, but that was the near fall. That was the near fall. That was before the near fall. Before that, he was going to hit Undertaker with his own tombstone power driver, but Taker managed to counter it. It's funny, like 10 years later, in their match at WrestleMania 27, Triple H managed to hit Undertaker with his own tombstone power driver. So anyway, so Taker was bleeding. In the end, he managed to hit another last ride, this time onto Triple H to win this match, and Undertaker is 9-0. So yeah, even though they're going to end up feuding once again during the spring, you know, Brothers of Destruction versus the two-man power trip, but this was good. Really good match. They're going to have, like, it's funny they won't fight at WrestleMania for another 10 years, you know, at Mania 27 and 28 in that Hell in a Cell match. So after 10 matches, we got the final match of WrestleMania 17. It's all for the marbles. This is for the WWF Championship. The Rock defending the belt against Stone Cold Steve Austin. This is technically the rematch from WrestleMania 15 from 1999. I think the 1999 match, that match of Mania 15 between Rock and Austin, because I think Austin was more over than The Rock, and the match was not between both Rock and Austin. It's still a continuation of the rivalry between Austin and McMahon, you know, Vince McMahon, and a little bit of Big Show Rock. So because Austin took the company into the promised land, to this new golden age. Once Austin got injured, The Rock picked up the piece, made him another, you know, the next top babyface, and became another megastar. Okay, that was like going to 99 to 2000. Fast forward to 2001. So Austin won the Royal Rumble match in January. The Rock won the WWF title against Kurt Angle at No Way Out in February to sell this match. Two big megastars of the company. So like the build up to this, you know, they had to sit down, and this is leading up to Deborah, because Deborah is at the time was Steve Austin's wife. You know, Vince assigned Deborah to be The Rock's manager, and you know, you had Austin kind of warn Rock to take care of her, but unfortunately he failed, because I think in that promo, he put Deborah in harm's way. You know, Angle lock Deborah in the ankle lock. You know, Austin attacked Angle, attacked The Rock, give him the stunner, and then Rock give Austin the receipt, hit Austin not one but two stunners leading up to this match at WrestleMania. So yeah, and also there was a they also dropped this storyline, this angle between with Deborah becoming The Rock's manager. Don't think it worked. I don't think it's gonna work. Deborah was only there because it's Austin's wife. It just makes no sense, because The Rock doesn't need to be a manager, even though he's been with people, part of the Nation of Domination, in 97, 98. But at this moment in time, during his career, the rise into that main event scene, he was a solo act. I think Deborah, the wrestlers he's been managed over the years, I think it's three. McMichael, Deborah's former husband, Jeff Jarrett, and to certain extent, Owen Hart, when Jarrett and Owen were a tag team, and that was it. So yeah, they ditched Deborah, and yeah, by the way, they added this no DQ stipulation, minutes before the actual match started. So wow, it's really, I think at the time it's probably the biggest Mania match, at the time, until you can say Rock Hogan from Mania 18, and probably the next time they did that, it'd be John Cena and The Rock, for Mania 28. But anyway, so The Rock got booed. He got really a mixed reaction. He got slightly cheers, but mostly boos, because Austin. I forgot. Because this is in Houston, I forgot to mention this. It's very funny. Actually, I'll get this later on. But it's funny. This is in Texas. Austin's the Texan boy. They want to see their hero from Texas beating The Rock. But he'll get booed the following year when he's facing Hulk Hogan. But you can tell he got some. You can tell the fans are leaning towards Austin than The Rock. This is match of the night before. I think it's way better than the match in Mania 15. It was fine, it was good, but like I said, it's more between McMahon, Austin than Austin Rock. This is between Austin and Rock. Two biggest megastars. And also, I just re-watched my original review of WrestleMania 17. I said they don't really need some celebrities. They are the fucking celebrities. They are the two biggest megastars of the company. So, trade back and forth, Austin decks, because Austin really do what it takes to become champion. You can tell he's fucking heelish, acting heelish. He decks The Rock with the bell. After, he had, I think The Rock, confronts Earl Hebner, and Hebner kind of tripped himself over the steel steps, and Rock almost did as well. It looked like Rock, and looked like he tweaked his knee or something like that, anyway, so, and then, Austin got bled, because he was exposing the turnbuckle pad. Rock sends Austin into that exposed turnbuckle corner. Austin bled. You could tell it's a back and forth match. There was chair shots. They kind of trade submission holds. The Rock locking the sharpshooter onto Austin. Rock was criticized over the years to produce a crappy looking sharpshooter, but Austin reached the ropes. Austin applied the sharpshooter of his own onto The Rock. I think Rock managed to counter that, because Rock is taller than Austin. I think Rock is 6'4", 6'5". Austin 6'2". Rock 6'5", 6'4", 6'5". Austin 6'2". Anyway, and Austin locking the $1 million dreams. It's a shades of his previous gimmick, the Ringmaster days. I think he did that submission hold when he was still aligned himself with Ted DiBiase Sr. was when he was starting out as Stone Cold Steve Austin. So they kind of referencing, they did the same, almost did the same finish to the, kind of referencing the Bret Austin match from Survivor Series 96, but that was in there for. They traded, like, they hit each other's, like, finishers, Rock hit Austin with the stunner, and Austin hit the Rock with the Rock bottom, Rock hit the, hit the spine buster and the people's elbow. Yeah, so they had comes Vince McMahon, going down towards the ring. Rock hit the people's elbow into Austin. Referee about to do the 3 count, but instead McMahon pulled Rock out of the way. He didn't pull him out of the ring; he just pulled him out of Austin, away from Austin. So, like, wow! And Austin was getting frustrated every time Rock kicks out. Man, he ordered Vince to give him a chair, come to the ring, bring the chair. Vince hit Rock with the chair. Austin pins Rock. Rock kick out. You had Vince interfering. Interfering. I think he did he? I think he was he kind of he interfered with the referee. I'm trying to remember, guys. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, you had Rock. Attacking Vince. No, I remember now. I remember. Yeah, Rock hit Austin with the Rock bottom. Vince. I think the referee's distracted by Vince. Then Austin hit the stunner onto the Rock near fall. You can tell, like, the reaction of Austin. He's just basically just fucking, like, shouting, "God fucking damn it!" You can tell, like, and also, like, you can tell a mile away. Austin and McMahon are in cahoots. So I'll get to more of that later on. So Austin hit not 1, not 2. I counted it. It was 16 chair shots onto the Rock to win this match and to become the World Wrestling Federation champion. I think it was the 5th time. I remember WrestleMania 14 became after King of the Ring. Mania 15, I think it was in July of 99. Yeah, 5th time, I was right, 5th. And Austin winning was good. People, they did cheer. I think they cheered the most match. I feel like it had some suspense. Who's walking out of WrestleMania 17 as the champion? Like, afterwards, and also, like, I forgot back to the JR Paul Heyman. Like, Paul Heyman he kind of berates JR. "I'm sick of your bias towards Stone Cold Steve Austin," and JR says, "Oh, shut up," knowing they're going to have that banter back and forth between JR and Heyman later throughout the whole of 2001. So, anyway, after this match, after Austin beat The Rock with 16 chair shots, if I forgot a spot, my apologies. Just write it down in the comment section below. Afterwards, Vince McMahon and Steve Austin shake hands, and I think JR, with that comment, he said, he's shaking hands with Satan himself. That's referring to Vince McMahon. He's technically the devil. No pun into MGF. So afterwards, you thought, like, maybe, like, Austin's gonna stuns Vince with the stunner, but instead he decks The Rock with the title belt, and the fans are not booing Austin. They're cheering for Austin. I don't want to get more in details of it. This time this video is nearly 20 minutes long, an hour 20 minutes long. So afterwards, he decks, after Austin decks The Rock, and he leaves, both Vince and Austin left the ring, and that was the end of WrestleMania 17. Wow. I don't want to go into more details about Austin's heel turn. I think, like, maybe at the time people don't know. I think you gotta give. Austin said in an interview that it's back and forth. Like, one moment he kind of liked the whole idea. He thought his career, he thought his character was getting stale. When you thought fans will boo Austin because this is in the state of Texas. He's the Texan boy, but no, I think people just I think he gets some cheer throughout his heel run throughout the whole of 2001. I think they just don't want to boo Austin. You know, he's still over, whether he's a heel or a babyface. This is the first time Austin turned babyface for the first time since 1997. But I can't, going back, I watched some clips, building up to my revisiting review of WrestleMania 17. Wow, it's just like I think Austin's heel turn was underrated. Yeah, underrated. Like the stuff with the when they had the rematch the next night on Raw, this time in the steel cage. You had Triple H. You thought he's coming down to the rescue to help The Rock, but instead he swerves, attacks The Rock. This is the formation of the two-man power trip. Austin and Triple H. It's funny seeing Austin aligned himself with McMahon. I think it's way better than having Deborah being there, because Deborah brings nothing to this. Vince makes no sense because the history, because the bad blood between him and Austin throughout 1998 and 1999. I don't know what he kind of threw with The Rock during this time, but Rock end up getting suspended in kayfabe, but it's a way to rein off The Rock because he end up off filming the Scorpion King. You can tell, I think you need a top babyface. There was a mix. I think Austin's heel run is a mixed bag. I forgot to mention, when Austin hit the stunner, The Rock, oversells it, with that crazy bump. But I forgot to mention that. But anyway, I think The Rock leaving. I think you need a top babyface, man, because I think it could be the timing was wrong, because Rock is off going to Hollywood, and then you thought there's going to lead up to one final battle between Austin and Triple H. He's the guy who masterminded the run over of Stone Cold in Survivor Series 99. He ended up getting injured in May. You need a top babyface, man. But besides that, I don't think it's a worse heel turn. For many fans, this is considered the end of the Attitude Era. I said in my original review, that's not the case. I say that the Evasion storyline's part of the Attitude Era. I think it's truly proper ends when the name change and the brand split. But yeah, I can understand people are pissed off. So pissed off. Not pissed off, but so disappointed because I think after 17, nothing's the same again. Your two big mega stars, one's going to Hollywood, that's The Rock. Austin, who for the whole bulk, throughout the whole bulk of the Monday Night Wars, he kind of feuding with Mr. McMahon over the years. Now he's aligned himself with the devil. He's now a heel. He's been the babyface for the whole of the Attitude Era. Is now a heel. It's just fucking craziness, So, after an hour 20 plus minutes of me revisiting and reviewing WrestleMania 17, so my overall rating of WrestleMania 17, aka X7, in a revisiting standpoint, back in 2021, I gave it a 10 out of 10. Fast forward in 2026, the score remains the same, 10 out of 10. When people say this is the greatest WrestleMania of all time, believe them, it is. It's just full of drama, it's a spectacle, and it's action-packed all in one. Benoit versus Angle, Vince versus Shane, Undertaker versus Triple H, the hardcore triple threat match, TLC 2, and Rock versus Austin 2. And also the things I also point in the pros is Chyna winning the women's title, even though her match with Ivy was just, it's just so and so, but you know, it's more of a moment. You know, I think like not every match, but most of the matches got some good payoffs. You know, but I can't find anything in the cons, like, you know, there's nothing like, oh my god, this is like terrible. Like the 6-man tag team match, you know, RTC versus APA and Taz was just fine, kind of there. But Jericho Regal was a fine opener. But no, you know, there's no bad you know, matches in WrestleMania 17. Like for many fans, yeah, this is considered to be the end of an era. Like the Monday Night Wars, you know, it's gone, it's over, it's in our rearview mirror. You know, because the company, the federation, bought WCW. Like two biggest stars, you know, The Rock's going to Hollywood. Austin, who's the big baby face, I know I'm repeating myself, is going to become one of the most underrated heels. Probably went on to have one of the most underrated heel runs of all time. Let's be real. You know, you don't know Austin's going to turn heel. You know, he's going to form an alliance with not just with Vince McMahon, with Triple H. You know, the 2-man power trip. You know, you're not going to get that tag team. You know, if you compare one tag team to the 2-man power trip, will be rated RKO a few years later. You know, but like it's just like the biggest what if now. What's next? You know, it's still waiting. You know. But there've been WrestleManias after 17 are good, but nowhere near close of there's some WrestleManias after the show are good, but nowhere close of 17. The one show I think matched the same standard of WrestleMania 17 has to be Mania 19. Let's be real. Like it's like comparing, you know, the MCU with the two Avengers films, Infinity War and Endgames. Which one's the better one? People will say Infinity War, and the other says Endgames. It's like similar to this. Which one's the greatest of all time? Mania 17 or Mania 19? You know, like I said, there've been WrestleManias over the years after 17. They've been good, but no cigar. You know, like I said, just 17 and 19. But like, wow, it's just like one of the best, you know. Like, it's like almost 4 hours, but it was really good, you know. I think they put up a 100%, put on a really good show. It's peak art, it was really in its peak, knowing that it's a massive curtain call. And, you know, it's funny, like, fast forward, like, 1 year later for WrestleMania 18, taking WCW out of the equation, would be 18 be good? You know, or would it be it'll be, you know, a good or a hinder? You know, good or bad? Or is it going to be like an upgrade, then a downgrade? We don't know. But yeah, I think it's a good victory lap for the Federation. You know, yeah, I advise you watching WrestleMania 17. You know, it's really good. You know, like, even though, like, you know, it is an end of an era. You know, like of the Attitude Era. You know, but for people, yeah, people will debate it. But yeah, I think it's like knowing what's going to happen. Like, yeah, like I said, the 2-man power trip outside the WWF, the XWF, you know, Extreme Football League, you know, the XFL, sorry, my apologies, end up, you know, going on business, you know, it's on its deathbed. The ECW/WCW's invasion will come and go. Like, you can't really predict throughout the whole of 2001, you know, what's going to happen, you know. So yeah, I think, you know, it's one of the best and the best WrestleManias of all time. it's the gold standard. So the next 2001 WWF pay-per-view I'm going to cover next will be King of the Ring. That'll be later in June. So anyway, so what's your thoughts on WrestleMania 17/X7 and this video? Watch my original review of this show will be in the description below. Smash the like button, click the like, click the bell, subscribe to the Central Man Network on YouTube, be part of the Central Unit for more wrestling videos and more. Next time, I'm going to cover one more WrestleMania to close out the 2026 WrestleMania season, leading up to WrestleMania 42 next weekend. So, I'm going to do a voting poll. So, your two choices. I might do another revisiting WrestleMania review. How about WrestleMania 22 Big Time? Or I can once again do another one. Once again, we're traveling once again back to Texas and review, I don't know, maybe WrestleMania 32. So those are the choices. Until then, this is the Central Man officially signing out. Check you later.